Hi, Aries. This is Leah, Fresh Astrology. How are you? Um, Happy New Year. I hope you have had a peaceful, satisfying holiday season, however that has occurred, whatever that means to you. And I really hope this is shaping up to be a good 2020 for you. Um, we're going to look at January. If you would like your 2020 forecast, I encourage you to join my membership lounge. I put the link below. And what you get there is you get all the forecasts first before I do them here. You get more content. You get weekly forecasts. When you subscribe and become a member, you get my newsletter, and which is an email. You'll also get put into a monthly drawing for a free reading and some basic astrology lessons. And then I'll do special theme kind of analysis. Right now, I have a series on the South Node, which is relevant because it's playing into everything that's happening in the coming year, especially as we kick off the year in January. The South Node is playing a pivotal role. So it's important to understand, what the South Node is, how it behaves, and that's why I have a whole series on it, because you have to come at it in different ways to really understand what it means and how to use it and how to stay clear of some of the pitfalls of the South Node, because it's just crunched into all the other activity in Capricorn. And this, likewise, it's important to look across the sky, across the chart, and look at where the North Node is and what's happening with the North Node in January. So let's get started, Aries. Again, if you want the full 2020 reading and more content from me, if you enjoy these, I encourage you to join me in the membership lounge, and the link is below. I'm also going to be talking a lot about purpose in this forecast, because I sincerely believe it to be very, very important, not only to me as an individual or to you as an individual, but to our collective, to the whole. And my company, Camille Co., it's a coaching company. We have online courses that deal with purpose, or if you need to work with your mindset and kind of feel more empowered so that you can begin to think about things like purpose, then we have courses for that too. So again, you can find those links below. So let's look, Aries. You probably know, unless you're brand new to astrology, you know that Saturn and Pluto are conjuncting, and that means they're moving into the same degree in the sky. And the way the chart is divided, the sky isn't necessarily divided this way, but the way astrologers in Western astrology have divided the chart, they've divided it into 12 equal parts, and assigned 30 degrees each to each zodiac sign. When you add all that up, you get 360 degrees, a complete circle around, the earth or the sun. And so when I talk about everything being in Capricorn, Capricorn takes up 30 degrees of the chart. And this area of the chart for an Aries is positioned over what we think of as your career zone if you're working or want to have a career. If it's not so much about your career, it can be about very public things that are happening in your life. So this is your public face. So if you're a socialite, your social world is very important, then this is your public face there. There's some very pivotal changes going on. And some Aries, if this is about your social world, could have found over the last decade that you suffered some bit of maybe embarrassment socially, or maybe you perceived it to be embarrassing. Maybe you didn't need to feel embarrassed, but you may have felt very much like you're under the spotlight for various reasons, various things going on in your life that everybody knew about. You know, examples might be, and it doesn't always have to be bad, but I do think over the past decade, most Aries have had things that felt like things that you didn't want to be public. You didn't want everybody to know. And there may have been some degree of humiliation, whether you fully admit to that or not. There's been something there like that. I think recently, I think you've come through all that. I don't think it's still present, but something's happening in January in your public world. So whatever is happening, people will know this about you. They'll know that there's some big changes going on for you. They'll know what's happening. It looks like for some of you, like a new job, a promotion, um, leaving a company, starting your own company, um, getting a raise, or getting elevated somehow, maybe becoming famous suddenly, or maybe becoming known as a writer is another option. There's a lot here that suggests some people could be published or become a public speaker, but somehow um, more people know about you, more people see you. So for whatever reason, maybe you're starting your own YouTube channel, or you have one and suddenly it just hits. Suddenly you go from being relatively unseen to being seen by a great many people. So it's just somewhere in that range of stuff. And again, if it's about your career, I think there are good things. I think there are positive things happening. The only exception would be if you, with Pluto, the Pluto energy there and the Saturn energy there, the exception would be in the South Node, is if you've cut corners or tried to do things kind of above the law, you think you're above the law, be careful, be very careful with your taxes, with anything. You need to be kind of spotless with Pluto here. Otherwise, anything you do that is not totally spotless and blame free will be held up publicly, and you'll be known for it. So just be very, very careful. Another way to use this, like if you are a writer or you create something for public viewing, to use the Pluto in the themes, like somehow fear or hardship or ethics, they could be a part of what you actually do or talk about. So that could be how you're using the energy. Many of you are becoming teachers, leaders, recognized leaders. So it's a big time. I think it's a good, I would say for most of you, it's a good time in your career. Socially, it's a little more complicated. Definitely you're visible. With Jupiter in here, people see more of you. You're more known to the world, even if that world is relatively small. By world, I mean, it doesn't mean necessarily that you're known globally, but in your world, you're known more in your world and more visible in your world. The North Node, which is where I would like to focus this reading, the North Node is sitting at the opposite part of your chart in Cancer. It's sitting down in the 4th house. So it's interesting that your career's lit up, or your public world, but really the North Node, kind of your true north, the inner compass, the thing you're supposed to follow to find your way, is sitting way down in the 4th house, which could mean a variety of things. It doesn't necessarily mean you're just supposed to sit at home, but it does mean that there's a focus on real estate, property, maybe the family, Um, but also there's an emphasis on your psychological development, that the past, things that used to drag you down from the past, the way you were raised, if you were raised in a certain way and you felt that the way you were raised has held you back or harmed you, this is a time to examine and let go. It's a time when you can finally be released from negative past influence. And I would say that to do it, there's a process that you have to go through. It doesn't just happen magically. There's some kind of psychological process that you're going through or have been going through, and maybe actual intentional work on yourself. Maybe some of you have gone into therapy. Maybe you've been, reading self-help books. Maybe you've been working with a coach. But somehow, or maybe it's more of a spiritual endeavor, but somehow maybe you've been doing the work needed to release your past, to let go of some stuff that you no longer need in your life, psychological stuff. But also, there is this idea of family. So there's something important going on with your family. It could be a time when you're either growing your family or maybe you're empty nesting. And this is an influence on you emotionally. And it's a time to rebuild your idea of family, I think, to strengthen your idea of family, or shift your gaze a little bit with what it means to have family. Like, how do you define family? You may also find that you're looking at your parents through a new lens, where you see your parents differently. And this is whatever the process is for this, whatever you're seeing about your parents, even if they're dead, it's a very, very important process. It's very important for your development. In fact, part of your purpose and why you're here alive right now is to go through this kind of process around what family means, what it means to nurture, what it means to be a parent. Kind of there's an idea here around unconditional love, and what that means. And somehow the reason you're here is not just to go through this in isolation, but it ripples out. So maybe there's something about the way you parent, if you're a parent, that impacts others in a positive way. Maybe you inspire others through your parenting. Maybe you finally are able to see your strengths, whereas before maybe you hadn't. Maybe you really recognize and can validate your own strength as a member of a family, as a parent. If you don't have children, this may be more, the framework may be more around your family of origin and the way you see yourself, fitting in or not fitting in, how you identify yourself is a part of what's going on for you. So there's it's really about your identity, and you're healing something that has felt broken. And I know Aries pretty well. I know a lot of Aries. Aries people don't tend to walk around wanting to admit brokenness. And I can kind of identify, I'm not Aries, but I can kind of identify with this ability to compartmentalize, because this is what I'm about to say about myself is very true of Aries. That I can walk around and people will say to me, people who know me really well will say, "You're just so calm. Like, you never get ruffled. You never get upset. You never blah, blah, blah." And to me, I'm like, what are you talking about? But then there's, so I know right off the bat that what they're saying is not true, that I do get, my feathers do get ruffled. I do get upset. but I have this appearance of calm. But even within myself, I can think and think I feel calm and be convinced in my own mind, like, yeah, I'm calm. No, I'm not stressed. But the reality is somewhere under the surface, I'm actually very, very stressed. And I've started to see, as I get older, I've started to see there's this way that I hide my stress even from myself. And it's important to know, it's important to know that the stress is there because it's going to make itself known somehow. And for Aries, I know this to be true. I know a lot of Aries, and I have Aries people in my family. They're very much like that, where you could ask an Aries and say, "Are you stressed? Are you scared?" They'd be like, "No, no." But they're like, if you're around them enough or you start talking to them, they absolutely are stressed and or scared. But their go-to and their mind is like, no, mm-mm. And that's perhaps why Aries is seen as brave, because they can compartmentalize somehow. But it's not healthy to be like that at all times. I think in certain situations, it can be a way of surviving and even thriving. But we're not meant to be compartmentalized all the time. It can start to wear us down and actually create health consequences. It can create emotional instability. It can do all kinds of things if we don't keep an eye on it. Hi, Laura says, what are you doing, Aries? I'm doing an Aries reading. Hi from PA. Hi, Laura in Pennsylvania. I'm assuming that means Pennsylvania. So you're a Cancer Sun, Scorpio Moon. Yeah, so right now I'm working on, this is Aries for January 2020, just so you know. But I'm glad you're here. But I will be doing, I'm going to kind of just move around the zodiac. So after Aries, I don't know if I'll do it tonight. I was trying to just kind of push through and do a bunch, but it's getting late. So I don't know if I have it in me to do any more tonight. But yes, I will get to Cancer and Scorpio, but I'll be going. But I did do Pisces already. So you can go in and watch that one. But I'm glad you're here. Hello. So anyway, that's a long way of trying to get at, what is it with this North Node in the fourth house? The way your particular chart is set up, and for Libra too, because they're like experiencing this, but just flipped on its axis. When you have like all this dynamism, this activity in your 10th house, you would think that your focus should be career, or you would think everything would be about that, and that's where you should be going. But there's something deeper going on, and I think it has to do with understanding the emotional journey you're on, which that just reminded me of a article, I think it was in the New York Times, about the Amazon coat, and the author was talking about the emotional journey of the Amazon coat, which I read through the comments after the article because I kind of had my own reaction to that article. But there's something deeper than the Amazon coat emotional journey going on for you, that as an Aries, as the good Aries that you are, you may not be fully aware of the emotional journey that you're on. You may or may not, maybe you are, but it's important. It's important to understand your emotions, to allow them to come to the surface. Whatever is developing in your family life, this is a very important time. So, like, for example, if your kids are going, I'm just going to give this as an example. So this may not be your life. You may not have children, but just listen to kind of what the story is in a more symbolic way, because it does have to do with you, whether you have kids or not. But let's say you're a parent, or there's, an Aries out there, many Aries out there who are parents. And let's say of that subset of Aries who are parents, there's another subset of you who are becoming empty nesters, like your kids are moving away. This is a very it can feel like a very vulnerable time as a parent. And what I would say is, in this example, the way you move through the situation of kids going off and doing their own thing is important, because you're beginning to set up new traditions. Because when your kids are always at home, you have, everyone's always around on, let's say, in the United States, everybody's around on Thanksgiving because they live with you. Everybody's around on Christmas, same deal. They're young, and also they're waiting on other presents. If you celebrate Christmas. And it's different when kids start to grow up and move on as families change and evolve. And all of you have some kind of family. As your family changes and evolves, as you begin to create your own family or feel like you have a lack of family, it's important to understand what's going on inside of you, what emotions are there, what's going on beneath the surface. And I know it's hard for Aries to slow down and quiet themselves long enough to kind of pay attention to that. But it's very, very important. And there's something you can do with respect to how you're willing to be vulnerable and show your emotions, or something important going on with how you're choosing to parent or create family that can inspire others. Absolutely, it will ripple through your family and set an example with your family. And maybe it's how you're interacting with a parent too, your own parent. But there's a type of standard being set, an example being set. You're here at this moment to demonstrate this very thing. So maybe it's how you create community. It's how you find and define home. Maybe it could be something, if it relates to your career, you could be going into real estate. You could be going into decorating. You could be going into landscape architecture. You could become an architect, so it could really mesh with your work world and how people see you publicly too. Because maybe what you're deciding to do for a career is changing. Maybe you start working from home, or the type of work you do has to do with homes. Maybe the type of work you do has to do with families, or empty nest parents, or aging people. There are many ways you can extrapolate from these themes. But whatever it is you're doing, however it fits into that list I just gave you, is very, very important. You're meant to be doing it right now. So I just encourage you, Aries, to find ways to practice quieting the noise out there, getting your mind a little more quiet, and really paying attention to where your soul is leading you. I think that's the most important journey for you right now. Yeah, this is for Aries, right? It's not a Cancer reading. If I said Cancer, I'm tired. And sometimes I just do that. I'll be talking and I'll be looking at the moon icon in the chart, and I'll say the sun. It's just a part of. So if I say Cancer, now I am talking, for those of you watching, and this may be a point of confusion, I'm talking about the sign Cancer in the 4th house in Aries, because in Aries, Cancer takes up residence in your 4th house of home and family. So if I say Cancer, I'm also referring to this part of the chart where your North Node is right now, and focusing on purpose and how it might relate to this larger theme, this big story unfolding for you, for everybody. But for Cancer, for Aries, It's happening in this area of Cancer and Capricorn. They're working together. And so even though Capricorn, just as a review, even though Capricorn, really talks about your public life, what's going on in your career, and if you don't have a career, it's just how you're known publicly, changes going on in your public life. The North Node and other indicators that would point toward where your real purpose is and the real important thing is down in this fourth house area that's governed by Cancer in your chart. And again, just to review before we sign off, that's the area of family, home, real estate, and your deep psychological growth. It's a lot about our emotional world is determined early in childhood. And when we speak about your emotional, psychological health in this area, we're talking about the ways your psychological health and emotional health was formed in childhood. And as we age, we begin to see things about how we grew up, and we have ways to fix and heal things from the past. And you may be working on some of that and helping others work on that. But I do feel like there's a lot of healing going on for the average Aries, which is good. All right, guys, have a wonderful January. Happy New Year. Take care.